Hi, this is Sam Lagana with the Los Angeles Rams. Whose house? You're listening to the Los Angeles Rams UK podcast. Undenied worldwide. The Los Angeles Rams. It doesn't get any better than this. Let's go Rams!
Good evening and welcome to another edition of the LA Rams UK podcast, episode 90. It says on screen 96, it's actually 97. Some things never change, just like the game plan. I'm John, and joining me as always is Andy. Andy, how's it going, mate?
I'm all right, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Just before we came on the air tonight, folks, I actually revealed to Andy that I haven't actually seen the game. So if anyone that watches this on YouTube has seen me like looking down, it's because I've got my laptop right here, just underneath my camera, and I'll be watching the highlights. So wee bit added bonus for anyone watching YouTube. You'll get to see a live reaction to me in my pain as I watch the game. Andy, did you? I think I spoke to you last. You said you didn't watch the game live. Is that the case?
Yeah, I didn't watch the game live, but I watched the 40-minute highlights the day after, and yeah, it was painful. But again, a couple of wrong decisions went our way, and it's completely, potentially it could have been a different game.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, injuries and stuff is hitting, and again, it's the severe lack of depth. If you'd have told me, at the beginning of the season we could hold the Bengals with our defense to 19 points, with the way we've played over the first 2 weeks, you'd have thought, yeah, we could easily get 21 plus points and beat them. But
yeah,
it just felt like one of them games. Nothing went right. Everything was going wrong. Obviously, as we say, injuries. Stafford was off. McVay, went back to, after praising them last week, has gone back to, I can't be bothered to run the ball. I'm not going to bother. So it just felt like it. We after 2 positive weeks and starting to look, having a little bit of hope and in the season, it's just completely gone backwards and fell apart again. And we've gone back to the same old Rams again from last year.
Yeah, it pretty much looks like from what obviously like I said, I'm kind of like watching down here, and I've just seen. We'll come to it. To Atwell, being, well, getting the end zone and clearly is still in bounds. You can even see that. You don't have to need to go to a replay to tell he's in bounds. In general, like as I said, he just came out of on the air. I didn't watch live because it was obviously Monday Night Football. But I was kind of woke up middle of the night and I seen the pop up in the score, and I was immediately really disappointed to see the scoreline, because the way the Bengals were kind of shaping up going into the game, and as we said last week, it was our game to lose. And look, reading all the stuff online, and seeing like Stafford basically throwing the ball right into the deck here, right in front, right like 3 yards out, and it just seems like we just regressed. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Is that a fair assumption to kind of make?
Yeah, it felt like we regressed again back to last year's, poor showings, lack of ingenuity, and just kind of, let's just let's just go through. It felt like we just went through the motions on Monday night. From what I could see, everything just felt off. It just was one of them games. Everything felt off. McVay's play calling was flat and uninspiring. A team that I can't remember what the ranking was, but 28th, I think, in run defense. That's a perfect team to just run the ball at, and we just didn't bother.
Seen the graphic you're referring to on Sunday night late, and I had us we were believe it or not, top 10 for run defense and stuff like that. We actually were shaping up compared to him really well, given the state our roster is in, and the lack of depth, like you said, and the youth that's on the roster. So on paper, it was really shaping up. Actually, we're a much better team than we actually are. And then the game started, I guess, and it went from there.
One thing I will say, T. Higgins for them seemed to have the Kadarius Toney effect, where every ball he got dropped. And on another night, if he'd have caught a few of them, this game could have looked a lot further away than it actually was. Fair play to the defense on the whole for doing for keeping it to 19 points. But on another day, a player like T. Higgins is catching those balls, and potentially the damage could have been a lot worse for us. I will say that much. We had a bit of luck on that side with him dropping as many balls as he did.
Yeah, I've just seen Atwell dropping the pass in the end zone there in the second quarter. Just on Atwell, obviously, like one of the things that came out of the game was a couple of bad calls. The first of which was, as I mentioned when I seen it on my screen, is Tutu Atwell touchdown. It was overturned because they claimed he was out of bounds. Andy, I'm pretty sure you'll agree with myself. I've actually seen an even better screen clip of it. He was in bounds, wasn't he? He was never out.
He was never out of bounds in a million years. I don't know. And how, this went up to New York, and New York even, were the ones who said he was out of bounds. And it's like, what, are you looking at something completely different from what we're looking at? Or, there was no way he was out of bounds in a million years.
Yeah, because what the whole New York thing is, it goes to them to look to see if there's evidence to clear and sufficient evidence to overturn the decision on the field. The decision on the field was that Tutu Atwell got in the end zone. It was a touchdown. When you look at all the replays, all the slow motions, how could they say that there was clear evidence to show that he had stepped out of bounds? When you freeze frame it and stop it, you can clearly see the edge of the field and a little strip of green between his foot, and the out of bounds marker. Like, how could they claim there was enough to say he was out? And people have generally responded, but you need to give Joe every chance to beat us, don't you? It's back to that one about Golden Boy needs to win.
Yeah, no, as I say, mate, it's just, well, I say maybe it is the Rams are supposed to be a crap team, so we'll get all the bad calls, and the Bengals are supposed to be Super Bowl favourites at the start of the year. We've got to give them something because they're not doing well. It does sometimes feel like, I don't think it is, but it does sort of feel sometimes with the decisions, especially with another one, that interception, the first one, second one, Stafford was, but the first one, for me, it wasn't an interception. The ball hit the ground before he never had control of the ball as it hit the ground, and yet they say that's an interception. And like I said, to you before, I can't remember whether it was in the Dolphins game, a player literally the similar situation, and was it Gene Steratore, I think, was like the ref analysis guy that they had on, and he basically went, no, that wasn't caught because he uses the nose of the ball on the deck to help control it. So it was ruled as a catch, and then basically New York went, no, overturned because he never had control, etc. And then exactly the same ball, basically did exactly the same thing, and yet they say, no, that's an interception. It's like there's no consistency with the decisions. It's like identical things, and yet one's ruled out as a catch, the other one's ruled as a catch and an interception. It just doesn't make sense to me. Was it two different crews, so they've got two different rules? Because it should be set throughout, this is what this is, and that's the rule. Not well, okay, what one group will say, this is a catch and an interception, and another one says, no, he dropped it and it's not an interception. It just doesn't make sense to me. That was one thing that just didn't make sense to me, is how, and I've sort of watched the slow-mo of the interception, and I watched the slow-mo of both of them, and the balls are basically doing exactly the same thing, and yet you get two completely different outcomes, and it's ridiculous how, I'm not saying, we did what, but if those two decisions would have gone our way, then potentially we've won this game. And it did feel like the refs were sort of, and not so much, but the decisions were just against us, and it just felt like every decision we were getting was against us.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is there's a clear lack of consistency with officiating.
Yeah, and it's not even the officiating as much. Yeah, okay, we all know, at that, the speed the game's going, a referee can get it wrong. But
Yeah.
that's the whole point of it going to New York, is so that New York has a better look, slow motion, everything else. They basically see what we can see on the TV and the replays.
Yeah.
Basically, and then they're the ones that are supposed to say to the ref, look, think you've got it wrong, go and review it. You can look at it, slow time. And yet, like I say, the call from New York on exactly the same plays is, like I say, it's two different things. It's just, like I say, there's no consistency and there's no common sense to it. And this is, it's frustrating that, you can see two plays exactly the same and get different results.
Yeah.
And then people say the league's, people claim the league's fixed, and you go, well, I don't think it is, but you can understand why some people can think that when you're getting two different decisions for the same thing.
I think I just seen the interception. I've got it's the 15-minute ones, highlights I've got on, and it's given me a false impression of the game that you've watched, even the 40-minute highlights version of this, because we're not looking great, but there's been a few decent plays. However, one of the interceptions, was it Wilson that picked us off?
Twice, yeah, you got both interceptions.
They got both of them, right? Because it mentioned on the subtitle text, it mentioned about his second pick, but the highlights hasn't shown the first pick then, because I'm in the third quarter now. But even that second one, it's very, if that, I said, I'm watching this for the first time here. It's very close to hitting the ground. And they didn't. Normally, when you see like moments like this, even in highlights or even condensed highlights, you would get a replay of it, and the highlights doesn't even want to show replays. An interception is a big moment in a game, so where you get touchdowns, you'll get a quick replay of the touchdown and highlights, but in the same with interceptions usually, but not here. I'm picking up one thing. A couple of things I'm picking up really quickly here. Our run game is non-existent anyway. We'll come to that in a wee second when we talk about the game plan. But the run defense looks a bit all over the shop because there's been a few instances they've ran straight through us. But the main one I want to pick out, and it's split into two. Firstly, it's Stafford. Stafford looks really unsure himself. It's like I'm watching Matthew Stafford from last season again, which is disappointing because in week one, it looks like Matthew Stafford of 2021. It just looks like the Stafford we were having to deal with last year. But is that down to the fact that he's not getting sufficient time in the pocket like he did in week one?
Yeah, I will say, looking at the game, once Jackson, and especially once Jackson and Noteboom went out injured, Stafford was, fighting for his life basically in there because he was getting pressured all over the place. But even, his passes, it was like he was, I don't think he completed one to Williams all night. It was, when he tried about 5 or 6 times, and it wasn't Williams' fault. The ball.
Sorry, I'm just this. Oh, this is bad to watch. I'm in the fourth quarter now. 9 minutes to go. Stafford scrambled pretty much right in front of their own end zone, and he's managed to get the pass off to Williams. So they'll show a replay of this because they're trying to debate whether it is because his knee's down.
Yeah,
they're showing slow motion replays of this, but they didn't show. Well, they showed one of Atwell, but they didn't the interceptions. Being kind of contentious. They're not showing that, so it's
yeah. As I say, Stafford was starting once the injuries happened. He was fighting. He felt like he was scrambling and fighting for his life because he knew he was just going to be under constant pressure. But the one thing with how inaccurate he was with some of his passing, it felt like the injured Stafford again, the elbow issue again, because when he had the elbow issue, he was spraying passes all over the place and he became very, very, very inaccurate. Before the start of the season, everyone was saying, if Stafford's healthy, the offense is going to flow. If Stafford starts getting injured again, the offense is going to struggle.
Yeah.
And it just feels like, to me, I'm just worried that this elbow injury or this back injury, that was causing the issues last year, he's had a couple of games now. Has it started to come back again? Because, the way he's playing, it's just starting to worry me that the guy's got an injury, or it's aggravating again. And his long-term issue is flaring up again after a couple of weeks of game time, and
Yep.
obviously practice time as well. The club, the team does try to manage him as best they can in practice, but in actual game time where he's having to fire it, all these injuries flaring up again.
As you say that and watching the way he's moving about the field here, it looked, there's his sack again. Oh Christ. It does look like like Stafford at the start of last year when we were going on about, is this elbow injury or back injury or whatever injury it is it worse than they're letting on it to be? It was an amazing catch by Puka there, right 2 yards out, which is going to set us up here. Sorry, listen, folks, I'm watching the highlights here. And this is, there we go, there's the touchdown there. This is our only highlight of the game, I guess. So it does give me the impression as if, no, I don't want to say there's something there, but like it makes you question, is an injury still there? Because against the 49ers, it wasn't too bad. It was a tough game, but I kind of put down, it's just not our night. Whereas watching this game, it's like, whoa, we've gone back a year here.
Yeah, that's something that is, has crept into the back of my mind. As I say, that I'm worried about is that a few games in now, the wear and tear, things are starting to go wrong for him. He felt great and healthy for the first couple of weeks, but just general wear and tear for the injuries. And if this is what we're going to be getting, obviously it's a 1 week sample. But if this is what we're going to get from Stafford consistently now, potentially throughout a year, is it time to start questioning that we maybe will have to move on from him? Because this is not the quarterback that we potentially could ever win anything with. Is it a case of, sorry, dude, your injuries are just too much. You're never going to get fit enough to give us a season, a good season, and that is a question that maybe at some point we are going to have to start thinking about, if this is the form that we're going to get from Stafford week in, week out. Obviously, we'll just have to see what happens. Hopefully it was just one of them games. I think Stafford is prone to having one of these sorts of games where it just, throughout his whole career, where it just doesn't go right. It doesn't, work out. So, but, if this is what we're going to get, we have to start asking questions.
Yep. Definitely. So kind of moving forward from Stafford here, the offensive line. Like I said, watching these highlights, which have now finished now, so you've got my undivided attention. The pocket just is non-existent. On the highlights, at no point could I tell where the injuries occurred, to see at what point it started to break down. Week one, we praised the offensive line. We praised Ryan Wendell, the offensive line coach, because it looked as if we could hold the pocket. And you called out and said, but let's see what happens when injuries start happening. Injuries have started happening, Andy, and it's again just like with Stafford, it's back to last season, isn't it?
Yeah, basically, it's again highlighted the severe lack of quality depth we have behind our starters. I did think, while we had our starting five out, the offensive line, looked decent. It was pretty much doing its job. Stafford wasn't under immense amount of pressure. It seemed to be, once Alaric Jackson went out and we put Thomas in, the left side of the line just fell apart. They basically, he may as well have not been out there. And then once Noteboom went out and Atram came in, that was it. It was just, there's two big glaring gaps that you could quite easily get through, which is what happened. Once that happened, that was it. But, and there's people questioning, when Jackson went out, we're paying Noteboom to be a left tackle. Why did they not move Noteboom to left tackle where he's supposed to be? And then, Brian Allen, maybe if we had to, Brian Allen came in as centre. We'd move Shelton Coleman, Shelton out to guard, which is where he played last year, which would have given us, the structure. And I sort of question what? Yeah, that makes sense. Why didn't they do that? Because clearly no offense to Thomas, he's not NFL ready. He
Mhm.
was literally Trey Hendrickson just basically just went round him like he may as well have not been there, and this is the worry. So, I've been doing a little bit of digging on, obviously, Note Boom and everything and some of the contracts that we've got. So, in terms of, obviously, the starting 32 left tackles of the league, where would you think Note Boom would sit in terms of his pay? So ranked 1 to 32. Where do you think we've paid Note Boom roughly in terms of, guard for tackle?
I already know I'm not going to like the answer to this. I'm going to say it was about middle of the pack, maybe.
Yep, as a left tackle, he's the 15th highest paid left tackle in the league, right?
But you're saying 15th, as in number 15.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean there's 32 tackles in the league. That's
but as in like the 32.
Every single left tackle in the league.
Yeah, he's the 15th highest paid left tackle in the league. So he's basically for 32, he's middle of the park. But obviously, we're not paying him as a left tackle. We're not playing him as a left tackle. We're paying him as a right guard. Guess where he ranks in terms of right guard pay?
Oh God, don't tell
or
me
guard pay.
He's higher than that, isn't he?
He's the 5th highest paid guard in the league. 5th highest paid guard in the league, with an average salary of $13 million a year. So if we're going to keep him at guard, we're basically paying him as a top 5 guard, which is not something he is.
No, absolutely not.
And this is, again, this goes back to is this bad from the front office? Why are we paying somebody this amount of money if you can't? We're paying him as a middle of the park left tackle, which was what we paid him to be, with a $40 million contract.
Yeah.
I still think that's too high for somebody who has been unproven, is very injury prone, as we're seeing yet again. He can't seem to stay fit. But when, if we're going to say, well, no, he's actually our starting guard, we're paying him as the 5th, basically as the top 5th guard in the league. So basically he's getting, paid as a top 5 guard.
It's one of those ones, like, I'm tempted to, but I don't want to put myself through it. If I was to sit and look at all the right guards in the league and see some of the names that he's been paid higher than, like,
this isn't just for right. This is for both right and left. This is for all guards in the league. He's the 5th highest paid guard out of all of them in the league. And you look at it and you're going, how the hell can this team justify paying somebody who's not? And this is bad management again from the front office.
Yeah,
that money could have gone somewhere else. And then
you're thinking other areas of the field where we're struggling in depth or even just quality, and instead that's where the money's directed. Oh no! Just shows you Steve actually just Steve Avia is the case in point here. It just shows you, see if they actually fucking drafted someone decent for the offensive line in the draft instead of wasting picks. No disrespect to Tutu Atwell because he's doing not bad so far this year, but in years gone by, wasting draft picks on positions where we didn't need the players, running backs that then got cut or were 4th or 5th in the depth chart. You think of guys that they could have fucking picked, they would become the end of their rookie contracts now, so we wouldn't have to pay them till next year when we'd have the money to pay them, and instead that's where we're throwing the money. No wonder, it's like you said, it's a mess. No wonder the back office is a mess and the roster's a mess because of decisions like this.
Yeah, so I mean, some highlights of some players he's getting paid more than at the guard position. Wyatt Teller, Shaq Mason, Cesar Ruiz, Nate Davis. Let's see who else have we got here. Probably shock you. Laken Tomlinson, Isaac Siamalu. He's basically getting paid more than all of these players. I'm sorry, but he's not. Landon Dickerson, he's one of the best young guards in the league. He's getting paid more than him.
I mean, from their perspective, they can go, well, he's getting paid more than me for that shimmer. Why am I not getting paid it? So they can use this to bargain better deals for themselves. But that's not the point. The point is you're paying a guy more than he's worth.
Yeah. You know, Noteboom as his left tackle contract is upon the lines. He's getting paid just slightly less than the likes of Jordan Mailata, Terran Armstead, Taylor Decker. He's getting paid roughly the same average wage as what they. It's like, what are you doing? What is this team doing?
It beggars belief, mate. It beggars belief.
And
In terms of your offensive line, the only person I actually rate on that line right now is a rookie. It's Avia. Avia's is a potential absolute stud in that offensive line. And I'm not trying to take away from anyone else. Like, Brian Allen isn't a great centre, but he's not bad.
well,
But,
I was just going to come on to Brian Allen.
like, well, no, don't tell me. I don't want to know what he's paid.
He's basically, basically, he's the 16th highest paid centre in the league, and he can't even get game time.
Yeah.
Again, what are we doing? Why are we putting $5 million a year down for this dude that he can't even? And we're not even playing the guy. You know, with those two contracts alone, I'm looking and going, yeah, this front office maybe needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Because these are stupid contracts that they're giving out for players, and they're not worth the contracts.
Yeah, like I'm like, if you take what their contracts off, right, in the cap, I'm not necessarily use that in one player, but you think of some of the players you could get, a couple of decent players or even decent veterans that were floating about that we couldn't afford to get because we didn't have the cap.
Yeah, if we didn't have those two, we'd basically the two of them together take up 19 million in cap hit for the year.
You could get a good couple of players,
Yeah.
like good players on that, all good veterans, on the veteran minimum deals and whatnot.
Yeah, say going back to the offensive line, this again shows bad management because we've seen the problems we've got. So one of the things, if you look at a lot of successful teams, apart from obviously us, one of the things they'll have is they'll pay decent decent tackles, decent guards. We're not talking mega bucks, but they'll give these guys, a bit like a backup QB, they'll give them decent money to come in to be the sixth man, the rotational guy. So that if they do get these injuries, they've got players, they may not be, all pro, Pro Bowl type, but they're solid enough that they can do the job week in, week out. That they're not a complete weak link. You look at teams like Philadelphia Eagles, they could put, a second defensive line out that's probably still better than most of, the majority of our first team players outside of Steve Avia. And it's like this lack of depth that we just seem to be, and, it's not something that's new to us and we've gone, oh, crap, okay. This happened last year and we're not doing it again. And we're still not, we've not learned from it, it should have been an off-season priority of, okay, we have limited cap, but this cap needs to be spent to get ourselves
out of this mess.
Yeah, basically a decent backup at those positions, so that if these injuries do happen, we've traded for someone like Kevin Dotson. Why is he inactive? That you're telling me that Troy Antrim and Thomas are better than him? The guy was starting right for the Steelers.
Yeah, the whole point of bringing him in and trading for him was to give, but not just depth, but a little bit of quality depth. Like you said, there's a guy that was starting
to challenge for that starting role from obviously probably Noteboom to start Noteboom, or was the plan to bring him in, get him in, he'll take the guard position and Noteboom goes back to tackle.
Yeah.
But he's inactive. And you're like, what are you playing at? That guy should have been straight in there, right? Okay. Even if he's on number 2, Noteboom went down, right, mate? Okay. Or, Noteboom, you're going back to left tackle. Dotson, you're in.
Yeah.
At guard now, would give us the stability. And it's like, what are we playing at?
I'm pretty sure the depth charts had Dotson as a starter.
I think they expected him to be the starter.
Yeah.
And then obviously they've give Jackson the left tackle role and Noteboom has been slid into, like I say, to the guard position.
Yeah.
But to not even have him dressed on game day and to have him as a healthy, inactive scratch, it's like, what the hell are you guys doing? And then we've got another guy, the rookie we drafted this year, McClendon. I'm sorry. Obviously, I've only seen what he could do in college, but he looked a good player for Clemson. And the only, like I said to you at draft time, the only reason he got kicked out, basically he got dropped, was because they brought a 5-star guy in who basically turned around and went, you either play me or I'm going to transfer someone else at the end of the season.
Yeah, when we done our mock draft, we had him in our draft board, and I'm pretty sure we took him, if I remember right. And I remember you saying, look, this guy's, he's only going to fall where he is because someone better than him came in whilst he was injured, and then he couldn't get the spot back. It's not that this guy was bad or anything.
It wasn't so much the guy was better than him. It was just a case of the guy threatened, I'm a 5-star recruit, you play me or I'm going, basically. I'm transferring out some. And there was plenty of other teams, Oklahoma, Ohio State, all them who were like, yeah, we'll take you, come to us. So basically it was a case of Clemson's management had to turn around and basically say, sorry, you're going to have to start you. But you're telling me Zach Thomas is better than McClendon? No, sorry, I don't.
Someone's having a laugh in the back office.
Either that or, obviously we can't see what happens week in, week out in practice. But to me, that guy has got to be a better option. And, it's like I say, it's the decisions that are being made as well. It's just like, what are you guys doing? What is going on here that, like I say, when I look at, so if we're going to keep Noteboom as a guard throughout the year, which is what we appear to be doing because we never moved him, he's not a top 5 guard. I don't care what you say. And we should not be getting paid as a top 5 level guard at, $13.5 million a year as a guard.
No.
Up there with the likes of Wyatt Teller. It's just a joke. It is something that hasn't, when I looked at the figures today, because I was sort of like, okay, what are these guys actually, in terms of, getting paid? And I was like, I don't believe as a freaking God, this is how much this guy's basically being paid.
It's just a bit ridiculous. But,
yeah. Anyway, we better move on, otherwise I'll be ranting all
night.
Let's
move on. The last thing I want to say, try and end in a wee bit of positive in terms of the game before we kind of come on to the main topic of conversation. The defense, they held the Bengals to 19 points. The Bengals, Burrow obviously played. Bengals have got some threats there. Watching it, there was some times where, they ran through. But in general, again, it's a not bad defensive performance again. And I say that because everyone, and ourselves included, put us down. There's no potential for that defense to do anything this year. Aaron Donald again was getting double teamed. He still managed to sack, a couple of tackles for a loss. He was 5 tackles, 2 assists as well. Ernest Jones was the same, 5 tackles, 2 assists. Byron Young, I've seen a stat. I think he actually, in terms of rookies, led rookies in tackling on defense this week. If I'm right, he was 4.5 a sack. Like, what do I think? Sorry, it was that's what. Witherspoon and Kendrick are rated highly in the secondary, in terms of stats, in terms of receptions allowed. The defense isn't playing too bad, is what I'm saying, and it's a shame because the offense isn't playing that great itself. That the defense is kind of trying to, once again, as we've seen in the past, they try and step up as best as they can because the offense can't get going. It's like going back to Jared Goff's last season where the defense was the only really good thing about us. And it was like, we're going to need the defense to win this game for us. What was your view on the defensive performance, Andy?
Yeah, I think overall it was, a decent performance. Again, we held them to 19 points. I mean, yeah, there was a few, obviously everyone can point out to Burrow's injury and the fact, it was clear the guy was struggling. He wasn't available, he couldn't move on his feet very well, and that was causing issues. But I thought on the whole, we played pretty well. They kind of could run at us a little bit, but we've always been a run squishy in the middle because we don't have that big, 330 odd pound nose tackle in there to, help stuff the run, which is just the way we are in our linebackers this year. Yeah, Ernest Jones is great, but Roseboom, I'm sorry, I don't see what the team sees in the guy. He can't do nothing. He misses his gaps. He's got no discipline. He can't cover. It's not as if, okay, he's a great cover, which, you'd accept a little bit of a lack of run defense, because he can cover well. He doesn't do anything well. He can't cover. Stop the run. He can't cover passes. And it's like, why is the guy even out there? And I think this was something we did highlight even before the season started, alongside Ernest Jones. It's again, I'm not being horrible, XFL caliber players. They're not for me NFL standard, players. So, I say overall, I did think we did well. Obviously, Witherspoon getting our first interception of the year.
Yeah,
fantastic catch by the guy, one-handed. Fair play to the defense. How he managed to keep hold of it with even just the contact himself. From the opposing player on him. Trying to stop it. Fair play to the guy. But like I say, overall, happy considering what we expected the defense, as you said, to be. And for the first 3 weeks, they've done a lot better than we thought they would be.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. If you had to, I know it's a loss, who would you say would be our player of the week? The weeks 1 and weeks 2, it was pretty crystal. It was clear cut. It was Puka Nakua. And anyone one person in particular I'm looking for that stood out the performance in the shining lights this week for yourself?
If I'm going to probably give it to anyone, do you know what? I'd give it to Brett Mayer. He's settled down. He's started to get himself steady. He's making his field goals. I don't think since the first couple of misses at the beginning of the year, the first game, he's been solid. He's been consistent, and he's starting to feel a bit more confident now with the guy. It tells you how bad I think the team was when our kicker is I feel the best player just because he never put a foot wrong and he got the job done. I don't think there was any, you could probably maybe say Witherspoon because of the interception, but, even that guy was getting touched a few times outside of that. It was just one of them performances. So, okay. What about yourself?
Witherspoon's interception would have stood out to me, but I think giving Mayer a bit of recognition is is due over the first 3 weeks of the season. Like going from Money Matt Gay to Money Mayer. I think I called him last week. The guy's got a leg on him. He's actually not as bad an acquisition as we maybe first thought he was going to be. So I think credit where it's due is definitely due. In the case of Mayer, so I'd inclined to say he deserves the credit for him.
Yeah, I think he's starting to get his confidence a little bit more, like we saw with Matt Gay when he came in. It was once he started getting the confidence to do the job again, he sort of it built up to what we had. So hopefully, I'm not going to say Mayer's ever going to be Money Matt or anything, but if he's just going to be consistent like he is now of hitting his points when he's needed. That's all you can ask for from your kicker. And, again, I'd probably say both kickers in fairness, because, even Evans, again, just looked solid again this week. Had a few booming, hanging points that we, you do like to see. Yep.
So that now moves me on to talk about, and it's relating to the title of this episode. Some things never change, just like the game plan. I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is going to be a topic. I feel like just like we had last year, defensive line will probably come up a few times. But this is the first game this season where we can categorically say that Sean McVay's game plan is fucked, for lack of a better word. And I say that because he's many years into his time with the Rams. It's the same old, and on Discord today, I actually asked, and this isn't any criticism directed at Mike LaFleur, our offensive coordinator, but I actually asked, what does our offensive coordinator actually do? The reason I asked that question is because my perception of what an OC does is, the head coach will have a game plan, so they'll take the game plan and they'll develop it. Well, this is the kind of plays, schemes, the systems that we can run to that game plan. On game day, they're up in the booth. They can see the field. They can see everything that's going on. They got a bird's eye view. And as part of that, and I think it's when I went back, and I remember seeing the America's game from the '99 Super Bowl, and they talked about Mike Martz when he was the defensive coordinator, and they went in depth and they said, like, Mike Martz, he calls out several plays, tell McVeal, right, run X, Y, or Z, and McVeal would then pick, what play he thinks to run. To me, and in fact, that's what an offensive coordinator does. They coordinate the offensive game. So they're watching the game, they're reacting to it, and they're saying, right, Sean, run the ball, run it here because on the right side of the defensive line, they're weak there, and I can see we can burn them every time. Run it, go up, go out right, pitch it wide, whatever. But what I feel's happening is LaFleur's doing that, and McVay's going, nah. Screen pass, third down, let's go. And it's basically, no, it's my game plan. I'm calling the plays, I call the shots. This is what I'm doing. It's my way or the highway. And then that's what I'm saying. What does the OC actually do when Sean McVay just obviously, clearly, just feels everything and just goes with, this is my game plan?
Exactly.
What's your thoughts, Andy?
Yeah, exactly. You do question, well, sometimes what is the OC there for? Obviously, he's probably more, in terms of, day-to-day in and out training of the team, getting the playbook installed, personnel decisions, stuff like that, and I think that's basically what he does. But it feels like McVay, I did put a bit of a long speech earlier. I think it was in reply to Aaron when he asked, if McVay stopped the play call and what exactly. So I kind of explained what different styles of, head coaches we have in the league. And I just don't know what McVay's playing at. I praised the guy last week because it felt like he was changing, and he had adapted his playbook. And it feels like he's just this week gone back to the cupboard, pulled the old playbook out from last year, dusted it off, and basically went, yeah, we'll just run with this. And it clearly didn't work. Now, hopefully this is the, lesson to McVay that, crap, we don't work very well. We need to go back to the playbook I had for the first 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But like we said last week, we were kind of almost waiting for when this would happen and he'd go back to his old self again. And it's ridiculous. Like I said to you, if the Bengals have got one of the worst run defenses at the moment in the league. If that doesn't tell you you're going to run the ball down the throat until they stop you, what does? Is this he doesn't have trust in Kyren Williams? Which, if that's the case, then we need a running back one. You need to go out and get one somehow to get a player you can trust. Like I said last week, Kyren Williams isn't the most athletically gifted. I think he's got one of the slowest 40 times in the NFL in terms of, his speed. But again, we have a perfectly quick back in Zach Evans, inactive again on the, not even dressing for the game. Again, it's back to personnel decisions. Akers is gone. You're telling me Ronnie Rivers and Royce Freeman are better than... I'm sorry. Again, I don't see it. I don't see with these guys. And, this was the sort of game where, maybe, a 1-2 punch of Williams and Evans, Evans with his speed, could sort of slash this defense apart and basically make life easier. So that if Stafford is maybe carrying a bit of a knock or isn't feeling 100%, take the strain off him. Don't just go to Stafford. Well, go on, mate. Now, you're just going to lob it up for the whole game. Yeah, you saw, but we just expect you to carry on. You just don't do that. Even the Bengals, with Burrow's injury, adapted the game plan to make sure, the best they could. They knew he couldn't launch it 60 yards downfield because, he can't plant his foot correctly. So they adapted the playbook to what he needed.
That's it. There's no adaptability there.
No, it's basically, like we've said before, this is plan A. Well, what do we do if plan A don't work?
Run it again.
Keep running plan A. It will eventually work. Well, no, it's not. And the best offensive minds, whether they're on defense or offense, they will change every year because teams will look at it and go, right, okay, that's what they ran last year. This is the looks they had last year.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so if they come out looking like this, it's a tell for the defense. Right, okay, well, they're potentially going to do this. Right, okay, we'll adjust to it. And the best ones, I hate saying it, but the likes of Shanahan adapt every year their playbook. They may have a core baseline to it, but they'll adapt looks and how they do things and, sprinkle a few different plays in every year. We seem to have that for week 1 and 2. And then, like we said, week 3, it's just gone, right, we'll put that one in the cupboard and I'll grab the old one, my old playbook back out because I want to run with that one this week. It just doesn't make sense. And, I did see a few people commenting that, was it time for McVay to go? At the moment, I'm going to say no, because it's 1 week. I think people are overreacting to, we had problems last year. The first 2 weeks, we looked decent. We seem to have adapted our playbook a little bit to, and that's what it felt like. He had learned, he had adapted, he had sort of gone into the off season with a new vigor and a new desire. Could it have just been psychological to him that he's gone, oh crap, my left tackle, my right guard's gone down. Okay, oh shit, and here we go again, and he's just basically, that's put his mood down, which you don't want from your head coach or your whoever's calling the plays. But is it time, not necessarily to get rid of McVay, but is it time for us to, if this keeps going, to turn around and say, right, you know what, hand the play calling duties over to someone else, give it to LaFleur or whoever the QB coach is or who the passing game coordinator, wherever you want to call them in the thing, and maybe get them, and just to say to McVay, we're taking it off you because it's stale and it ain't working. What you're doing is
people would be more
working.
comfortable if they relinquish the play calling duties. I don't think it's like McVay isn't a bad coach. I think he's maybe a bit of a control freak, and it's maybe I know you could maybe look at it in a bad way, but maybe it's just his competitiveness that it just unfortunately comes across a negative way that he won't let other people decide for him. But and it's purely the offense side, because on defense, it's Raheem Morris.
That tends to be the way though. If you've got a head, an offensive head coach, it tends to be, that's their baby. Defense is nothing to do with them. If you went to a defensive team, so Patriots, Buccaneers, Jets, teams like that, where and now the Texans, obviously with DeMarco Ryans, who are defensive head coaches, the defensive playbook tends to be their baby, and their offensive coordinator is basically in charge of everything to do with the offense, which is why a lot of these, if you get yourself a good offensive coordinator, you might only have them for a couple of years, because after that, someone's going to hire him as a head coach. Because it seems to be now the trend is most teams want a offensive-minded head coach. It tends to be the big the trend now in the league is most teams want an offensive-minded head coach, because that's where you get the explosiveness, and that's what teams want. In the past, it was you wanted a defensive mind, and there's very few now who will be the CEO type, if you like, head coach, the likes of your John Harbaughs, your Mike Tomlins, who basically they give everything to their respective coordinators. They may have a little bit of influx, but the majority of it is, right, okay, that's my offensive coordinator, that's your side of the ball. You're my defensive coordinator, you're that side of my ball. And I'm basically the guy in the middle to set the culture, to handle dealing with players, to just be the face of the team, to basically, and that's what they do. They don't tend to get involved. And, I don't see McVay accepting that sort of role. I just don't see him because of, I don't know whether it's control freak or maybe it's a little bit of because he's been praised for so long as, this young genius. Is it his ego maybe a little bit? He's a bit egotistical now because, he's, I think the most successful coach within so many years, the youngest ever successful coach. And, he's been praised up for years in the media as this genius. And is it, like I say, is it an ego issue maybe, do you think?
Perhaps. Well, I said, I think it's maybe the kind of control freak kind of element to him that is basically very precious. Like, perhaps it could be ego or whatnot. But like I said, it's one maybe for us to watch as the season goes on. I'm not saying I want him gone. All from me, all I'd like to see. I said it last year as well. I'd like to see him let the OC call the plays. Your game plan, that's great, but let the OC dictate how the offense should run. End of the day, it's part of their job. Like step back. You could be a better head coach by managing the two of them and letting them do. Like you said, offensive head coaches will more likely call plays, but he's never once stepped in when the defense has played bad and go, do you know what, Raheem? I'm calling the plays. We're doing this, we're doing that. He's let Raheem Morris play his game, regardless of whether or not the defense has performed well or not. Give the OC the chance. Mike LaFleur's not exactly a bad offensive coordinator to have, so, it's like I said, I don't necessarily want to see McVay go, but I'd like him to actually utilise the OC in the best way possible. But like I said, it's maybe one for us to watch.
Yeah, no doubt as the season goes on, much like last year, we will at various points get into this, and we'll see. As to, like I said, hopefully this was just a one-off blip that it's kind of and whatever playbook he was using on Monday night is basically been stuck in the shredder and burnt to make sure it never comes out again for as long as he's there.
That's it. So let's move on to what's happening elsewhere in the league this week. And I think the biggest talking point, well, from my perspective, yours might be different, Andy. The biggest talking point in the league this year is actually not football related. It's obviously Travis Kelce's love life. If you've been living under a rock and haven't seen this, because it's all over social media, he's came out and he's obviously dating Taylor Swift, which is delighting my wife and giving her an into American football. And she's like, how do you know, like the Chiefs? Taylor's man plays for the Chiefs. So yeah, that's obviously the big thing that's kind of all over the media this week, which is funny because you've got Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift there, and then you go to the Philadelphia Eagles and you've got Swift and Kelce there as well, but it's maybe a different kind of relationship there. It's more a kind of relationship on the field as opposed to off the field. Andy, anything else? Anything elsewhere in the league that caught your eye this week?
Oh yeah, obviously I think we are going to have to talk about the complete blowout of the Broncos by the Dolphins. It is a question for you. Obviously I don't know if you watched the game or seen anything of the game.
Seen the highlights.
Yeah, but they were basically within 30 seconds they were in field goal range to they kicked the field goal and they've got the record. Would you have said screw the Broncos or screw whoever, I'm just going to go for the record? Or would you be like they did and basically went, yeah, we're going to kneel it out now and just let the game run?
I know why McDaniel didn't go for it. Personally, I'd have went for it. I'm the type. I'd be the type of coach. If I smell blood, I'd be taking every, drop of blood from them. I'd be going for it. But I suppose there's two reasons why I think he didn't go for it. Firstly, because it would have been, the pressure on the players' head that they've broken the record, and that's all people would talk about is they broke the record. The Dolphins team. He maybe doesn't want that added pressure put on his team because they look pretty decent this year. The other side of it is he obviously was, a ball boy for the Broncos, and there's people saying that no, he showed them mercy. He showed them that he was the bigger person. He could have absolutely they did destroy them, right? Let's not be around the bush here.
I'm sorry that you dropped a 70 bomb on you. You got destroyed.
Annihilated. They pressed the red button on the Broncos this week. But they said about it kind of showed that he was the bigger person. He says, I could go for it. I could, add salt in the wounds. I could really go for it, but no, I'm not. But the thing, the thing that gets me is how the Broncos obviously traded away picks to get Sean Payton to get coach who gave up 70 points. I can't remember a team scoring that many points in a game. You know, I know, like, one team, I mean, I know we had, like, the Chiefs Monday Night Football game, but I can't recall, I've never seen, other than playing in Madden on, like...
I was going to say, it was a Madden score, wasn't it? It was like...
I was like, when I seen it first, I thought, no, that's a typo.
That's when you sort of, it's only one of them scores when you're going up, you're going up against your 10-year-old kid in a multiplayer and you're just like, yeah, I'm just going to daylights at you. Yeah, that's what you get, you know. It was ridiculous. Like I say, it was, like I say, I could understand, he did say in his press conference afterwards, I'm not here to humiliate anybody. We've done our job. But, I can see the side of it where people are saying, well, if the Broncos didn't want them to score that many, they should have bloody stopped them. At the end of the day, it's down to the Broncos to stop these guys. And, they didn't. And, now, is it maybe time to think that the Dolphins could potentially, they're definitely up there now, I think, with Super Bowl favourites now. Certainly, for the AFC, they've got to be one of the favourites after a massive statement win like that. And I tell you what, whoever had Mostert and A-Chain as their fantasy running backs,
just coming on to that,
seriously, you just needed those two players, and you've basically won your matchup for the week before you've started.
I think between the two of them, they were 95 fantasy points. Yeah. I believe they were between them. And did Waddle have something like 40 points?
No, it was Waddle didn't play. It was Hill. Yeah, Waddle was. That's what I say. Waddle was out injured. They didn't even have the second best wide receiver out there, and they managed to destroy them. So God knows what would have happened if Waddle would have been out there as well.
Unbelievable.
I've been looking at a century. Some other games, I suppose, we'll quickly discuss. Obviously, fair play to Arizona. They got the win against Dallas. Wasn't expecting that. I think everybody again was expecting, Dallas to smash them, and fair play to the Cardinals. They didn't, and they played a good game as well.
Yep, I seen a cracking meme earlier tonight of Dak, and it's like he's kind of like you can tell he's upset, and like the caption is that, have you all got any more of those easy teams?
Yeah. Obviously, I think we'd probably say it was a shock result was Houston beating Jacksonville.
Yeah.
37-17. It looked, I'm not going to say Houston have got it together, but, CJ Stroud, I think, has arrived for them and basically shown potentially what he could be for them going forward. Again, I don't think anybody expected that result. It was one of those weeks where it felt like there was a lot of weird results that people weren't necessarily expecting. And to be honest, all right, Carolina lost the game, but they looked a lot better with Andy Dalton as the quarterback than they've done so far with Bryce Young as the number 1 overall pick.
Bryce Young, who doesn't know where to line up on the football field.
Yeah. They looked a lot better. Obviously, so there's been a few weird. It seems to be one of them weird result weeks that, obviously Indianapolis, who we play next, beating Baltimore.
Yep.
And they didn't even have Anthony Richardson out there either. It's kind of like nobody expected that either. It was kind of like, say, it was one of them weeks I felt it was just, there was a few really weird, obviously ours felt like a weird result, but there was quite a few weird, quirky results that I don't think people expected. It's just that you do tend to find in the NFL season there is normally like 1 or 2 of those weeks throughout the year where there's just some really weird results that nobody expects, and I think this week was clearly one of them.
Yep, definitely was. And wrapping up from this week, let's move on to last week. Let's move on to this week. And before I come to our game of the Colts, first thing just to kind of quickly mention is it's the beginning of the international series. So the Jaguars come to their second home this coming Sunday, where they take on the Falcons at 2:30 UK time. Will you be watching it live, Andy, considering it's a reasonable hour?
Yeah, I normally do like to sort of sit down and watch the afternoon games with my, my kids and what have you, if they obviously want to watch it with me. But it's an extra few hours of football on a Sunday. He doesn't like an extra few hours of football. So yeah, I'll probably, fingers crossed by, the missus giving me a bunch of jobs and saying get them done first. I should be watching it, yeah. And to be honest, I'm kind of, looking forward to the game because two teams that, have got potential, to make it potentially, to the wild cards and, to the playoffs. Both teams didn't have good weeks. Obviously, Falcons lost against the Lions. So, be interesting to see what happens in this game.
Yeah, should be interesting. The other game I want to kind of quickly bring up is, I'm going to call it the Murder Bowl because it'll be absolute murder to watch, the Broncos and the Bears, which I believe is a prime time game this week. And I've seen so many people calling out, you've got to flex it. Like, nobody wants to watch that.
No, I would not worry that. That is going to be... It's either going to be like watching paint dry or, it's just going to be a horrible game, I think, to watch for people. And, it's one of them games they should have flexed it and, moved it because, I think there was a little bit of excitement for both teams, coming into the year, but it was clearly unfounded. Positivity on both sides. Justin Fields, I don't care. People at the start of the year were going, watch out, Justin Fields MVP. And I'm like, really? Get lost. The guy'd be lucky if he's got a job by the end of the year.
I don't think it'd be lucky to have a job by the end of this, by like maybe the midpoint of the season, the way he's going.
Yeah,
but yeah,
and obviously
from one horrible game to hopefully not a horrible game, and that's our week 4 match where we'll be travelling to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Kick-off is at 6 p.m. UK time. Recent games against the Colts, we are 3-2. We've won the last 3 on the trot. Andy, how are you feeling going into this one? Confident?
Not anymore, no.
No. A week ago, I mean, I had this down as a win in my predictions.
I think I did, yeah.
I would have said, yeah, you know what, good chance to win this game. But with the Colts beating the Ravens just at the weekend there, I kind of like, Chris maybe was sleeping on this Colts team in terms of my predictions, thinking this is a game we will win. I mean, never say never, I guess, but I'm not, after Monday night as well, I'm not really confident going into this one, to tell you the truth.
No, again, I think, depending on what the injury situation. I mean, I don't know if you've seen anything about what the injuries are for Jackson and Oatbeam and what the long-term prediction. I'm not to say we've not heard anything. The team's been very stum. We'd normally have heard something by now with, injury reports coming out. There's been nothing. So, the fact that things are up in arms, we don't know who's going to be the starting thing, the starting offensive line and the injuries we're carrying. What Stafford are we going to get? Is it the Stafford we saw in this week, or is it going to be the first 2 weeks? There's lots up in the air, and I just, like I say, I don't feel confident. The Colts have they're going to be buoyed from their shock win, and again, we tend to historically struggle. Again, depends on who their quarterback is as well. But we historically struggle against mobile quarterbacks, and there's no better mobile quarterback in the league than Anthony Richardson. I personally rate him even better than Lamar Jackson. I think he's a better. I think he's even better runner than Lamar Jackson. I really do. That's how I think he's the best running quarterback in the league already as a rookie. That's how highly I do rate his. Yeah, he's got some things to clean up in the passing game, but in terms of his athletic, I think he's the most athletic quarterback I think that's ever entered the league. That worries me because, like I say, historically we struggle against mobile quarterbacks like that. We just don't seem to be able to ever. How many times has Murray touched us with his legs over the last few years? And that's something that does worry me, that, he's basically going to have a career game against us because we won't be able to stop him.
Yeah, it doesn't look good, let's be honest here. So, yeah, In the predictions, did you have this down as a win for us?
I had this originally down. This is one of my few wins that I did think, because they had obviously Richardson coming in, and at the beginning of the year there was not even knowing if he was going to be starting. It was one of them teams, they do, especially on defense. As much as we say our defense, they have a lot of players, especially in their secondary. They might have a decent front four, and one decent linebacker, but their secondary is XFL level like ours is. So it was one of them. I thought Stafford would be able to do enough to basically get us the win, but now, like I say, after what we saw this week, the confidence is gone again.
Yeah.
We just hope and pray that, like I say, McVay has torn that playbook up and is never going to use it again, and he goes back to what worked against Seattle and to a certain extent.
Yeah, whatever
the
he did
Winers.
against them.
Yeah,
because it was a totally different game plan, and it worked, and obviously got us a win that nobody could see coming.
And like I say, hopefully for Stafford, it was just that one blip week that he basically, it just everything was off kilter for the guy. But like I say, that worries me moving forward. So we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose. But confidence is back to zero for this, I'm afraid, at the moment.
And it's sad. It's sad to say that, because we did get a question. A question come in. It's a good way to segue into a question we got from Richard Francis on Facebook, and he asked, how much potential do you feel this team has? Going into the season, we didn't feel that there was much potential there, but we did say it could be a chance for guys to step up, to show if they have any. After week one, we came out coming out of that game, we felt as if hold on, maybe we're not as bad actually as we thought we were. Maybe we're not giving ourselves enough credit. But the way the last 2 weeks gone, particularly as Monday night, there's glimpses of potential, I guess, there, but there's a flip the coin. There's a lot of potential for us to be like nothing there. Would you agree?
Yeah, it is very Jekyll and Hyde at the moment. We're still, in that limbo now of we don't know what this team is. Was week one a pure fluke? It was first game of the season, just one of them fluky games. Week two, was it more to do with the Niners kind of like, who the heck's this Rams team? We don't even need to try to beat these guys. And, they got lucky in the end. And, week three was more of what we're going to be because, injuries and lack of production from, the few star players that we have. Especially at the quarter, not being funny, like I said before, at the quarterback position, as I think Stafford's injuries creeping in again and his problems that he's had for the last number of years. There's all those questions that are starting to come up again, and you just don't know. The next, to be honest, the next 2 or 3 games is probably, I think, going to define our season. Because if we can get a good result against the Colts, that may buoy the team back up again. The confidence that, not being horrible, the Eagles haven't looked like anything special so far.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the dominant team that I think everybody thought they could be. So there's a little bit, and then I'm not going to say, we are coming into some games which then could be, the 50-50 games for us. So I think the next few weeks is going to define our season, I think. Define what we're going to do moving forward for next year, because there are still rumblings off fans and analysts that are basically saying, if the Rams lose the next few games, could they really tear it down and start trading away players, the likes of Cup, Donald, Havenstein, and just basically say, stuff it, we're just going to completely rip this apart and just, tank for Caleb, potentially, or whoever, because they're just going to want to rip it up. There's no point keeping this going. And I think the more the results are not going our way, the longer this talk and the more vocal and that more prominent it's going to get. At the moment, that fans and analysts are going to start questioning is the right thing to do, just to completely rip it the band-aid off, just tear the lot down, like I say, and just tank and hit full. Coming into the year after the first week, we thought maybe it wasn't a rebuild, it was just an adjustment and a retool rather than a whole. But a lot of people are now saying potentially rip the whole lot down and enter rebuild mode, like the Texans have done, where that they've ripped everything out. They've gone with a bunch of practice squad XFL caliber players, got a few high draft picks, and then started to build the team up that way. At key positions.
Yeah, there's that worry that we may never see Cup play for us again, because there could be that element of it now. But another way to look at it is we could win on Sunday.
That's what I say. We could win a couple of wins, and all of a sudden that talk goes away.
Yep,
I think
exactly.
that talk goes away. If we go into what is it week 8, week 9, the trade deadline is. If we're 500 or maybe a game in positive, that talk will go away, because all of a sudden with how bad the NFC as a division itself is, you could have a 9-8 record and make the playoffs, as the wild card 7 seed, with how bad the NFC could be. So if you're 500 or even a game back or a game ahead, all of a sudden you're still in with a shot. But if we lose on Sunday and then potentially we're going to lose, then I still don't see us getting a win against the Eagles personally. You're then looking at what, a 5-1 record. It all of a sudden gets damn sight harder for us to even consider playoffs. We're looking at like I say, do we just say forget it, shut it down, and
just
play for a high draft pick for next year? There's all that. It's got to come into the that people are going to factor in throughout the year. But like I say, hopefully, this week was a blip. It was just one of them games. It was. I think every team has that one game throughout the year where you're kind of scratching your head and go, "What the hell just freaking happened?" We normally have one or two every year. Look at a couple of years ago. Was it? I think was it against the Bears or somebody, and they absolutely smoked us, and we're like, "How?" Yeah. So we always seem to have that one or two games that leave you going, "What?" And this is hopefully that game for us. And we can move forward, get the win this week, and start getting a bit of positivity back into the team again, and start looking towards future games.
Sorry, the NFL website I've got on here, because I was just looking at some stats. Play. Yeah. Things it's like we're saying, it's like it could be. It's one of those games, like I said, we've got the Colts, the Eagles, the Cardinals, our next 3. It's these are 3 games that could define or flip the season.
I wouldn't say so much the Eagles, because I don't think. But if we walked out of that one now with the with two wins and a loss, all of a sudden things start to feel, I'm not going to say magically rosy and we're going on for a Super Bowl.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, we all of a sudden feel a bit more. What we'd be, I think, 500 then on the season. All of a sudden you're feeling a little bit more confident that going forward that there is something there that we can not necessarily compete for a Super Bowl, but we can at least put on a decent performance so that moving forward.
I think the problem is kind of hovering about that 500 mark. Whilst the way things are, we would take that on paper that doesn't really define a good season, because you're not bad enough to have a decent draft pick, but you're not good enough to have made it into the playoffs. That kind of middle of the pack is kind of like a bit of a poison chalice in that respect. However, that's generally speaking, that's the way things are for us now. It's one of those ones that actually would be a successful year for us here, all things considered, with the lack of cap space, guys we've had to move on, injuries, and just the general running of the team. it
Yeah,
wouldn't be too bad.
yeah. So a lot of analysts in their power rankings at the start of the season, they had us as a 31st worst team in the
Yep.
league, or 30th. We were basically, I think it was the Cardinals, depending on which analyst you looked at, it was the Cardinals, then us, or it was the Cardinals, the Texans, and then us. So, if we can, yeah, it may not be great for our draft pick stock, as in, we're not going to get top 5, top 10 pick.
Yeah.
But it gives you confidence that moving into next year with another year's experience under these rookie belts, that they're going to have that experience. They'll keep moving on with their progression and their development.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, all of a sudden, it doesn't matter that you're not picking top 5. The fact, and as we've said, Les Snead will wheel and deal, and maybe if there is a player that the Rams want, he's not afraid to go up and get him or do whatever.
But we'll have capital to trade for that.
Yeah. We can then step into next year's free agency, look at players and go, right, okay, we need a second middle linebacker, right? We'll go out and grab one. Okay, let's get ourselves hopefully, a swing tackle and a swing guard, so that we've got the coverage, on the bench, so that if there are any injuries or, to push for those reps, okay, we need another cornerback, right? Okay, we'll go out and sign, a good cornerback to put into the team. We need another, wide receiver, right? We'll go out and, move on or, extend, whoever or, whatever they decide to do to get that, the third wide receiver on the team, but it gives us then that options. We'll know then better, that it's not a complete, and there's loads of holes. It could be that there's only, 2 or 3 holes that need to be filled in the, the draft and free agency. And then all of a sudden, it's not as bad, you can, rather than just basically saying like, at the start of this year before going into the draft, it was basically, the whole team pretty much needs a rebuild.
Yeah.
We need players everywhere. All of a sudden, you like, well, actually, we don't need players everywhere. We only need them, like I say, linebacker, corner, wide receivers, for example. So, between the draft and, free agency, we can fill those positions with ease, and then we're ready to move forward into the, and to start pushing again for playoff positions.
Yep, I think the way I kind of summed it up, the way I was when we were done the kind of pre-season wrap up, looking at the 2023 season, the way I kind of summed up is treat it as the 2024 pre-season. This is a chance. Like pre-season is where we get our guys, developmental guys in. Here we're looking to see if we want to keep them on or whatever we want to do. The actual regular season is much the same in my respect. Like you're saying, Andy, when it comes round to the draft, we should be next year. We should be drafting for quality, as opposed to no. We need to fill gaps. If we're filling any gaps, it should be very minimal because we'll have had the full season of these guys basically showing what they're worth. Like you said about free agency, we'll have the cap space that we should be able to go after a good few guys in free agency. So then again, the draft is about drafting quality guys for us to bring in to then develop. Try to find guys like Steve Avia or whatever, or your Byron Young or your Kobe Turners, just to name a couple of the guys who kind of stood out from the rookie class. And obviously Puka Nakua as well. Guys that have stood out from our draft picks last year, going out and found more guys of that, a bit of quality to add to the team, and with a bit of youth as well as skill.
Yeah, but if next year, if, you look at players who went, roughly around where, if you end up with a 500 season, at the end of the year, you're looking at 15 to 20 in the draft, as your first round pick. You still have players like Will McDonald in that range going, quality players who, he's not getting game time every week because, on the Jets, he's stuck behind, quite a lot of players. But, those sort of game changing, even in the middle of the field, you can still get those in the middle of the first round, you're getting those game changing players who can basically step in from day one and do the job, rather than, what we've had to do this year, which is, okay, yeah, we've done well with this year's draft, but historically we've just had to rely on mid-round picks to sort of fill gaps and pray.
Yeah.
That they do develop, and as much as we've had some players develop, we've had some that have just never clicked, and have not even made the team. Look at Logan Bruce this year, 3rd round pick, and he's just gone. He's on the practice squad because they've never, So for every success, we've had plenty of drop offs. But with a 1st round player, there's less chance of that happening, and there's more likely to make an impact moving forward. But like I say, it's a long way down the route, but that there's options for the team. But I say I'm just looking at the schedule up to our week 10 bye. Let's just say we've got Indianapolis, Philadelphia, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Green Bay until we hit the bye. If we can come out of there, let's say 500 record or even a game behind, there's a lot more positivity going in to the second half of the season than there is at the moment. I think the feeling is at the moment. And even after the bye, we've got Seattle, Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, Washington, New Orleans, New York, and then obviously the Niners again at the end of the year. But there's games there that if you're positive, you can feel like you can win those games. But at the moment, they just look like impossible games that we can't win any of them. And that probably affects the players to a certain extent as well. If there's positivity, then players are going to be upbeat. If there's negativity around the team, heads are going to, especially for rookies, they're not used to the grind, of struggling seasons. It can mentally affect some players. So if we can keep the positivity around the team and keep coming with a decent record, it can buoy players up. And again, if we are looking competitive by the trade deadline, as much as people are saying players getting out, could we see Snead make a trade and bring somebody in?
Well, that's it. Yeah,
I would never rule out.
What's there to stop us bringing someone in? For like a game behind or sitting at 500, they're like, do you know what? See if we trade out here, we can maybe make a push for the playoffs. So yeah, I it's still we're only 3 weeks down the season.
Yeah, it feels doom and gloom and like the season's over because of how poorly the team played. Yeah, it's not. There's still plenty to play for. There's still, like I say, I'm not saying, put your bets on the Rams are going to a Super Bowl and they're going to win it all. I think anybody who thinks that is delusional. I'm not being horrible, they're delusional. But I do still feel with how well the defense has started the year and for the first 2 weeks, how well the offense was moving things, like you say, we've still got Cup to come back, that if these injuries to Jackson and Noteboom aren't as bad as, they potentially could be, and they're going to maybe even be back for this week, we still have potential there. And like I say, I joked with my mate the other day because he's funny enough, he's a Broncos fan. I actually said to him, so do you think we could sign there? Obviously, I don't think Pat Surtain's going to be happy there. Do you think he'd come to the Rams? He said, well, there's rumours he's not happy with the team at the moment. So, if Steve was to turn around and, at trade deadline and say, yeah, guys, I've traded and we're bringing Pat Surtain in to our secondary, I'd be freaking well happy with that, something like that. Not saying it's going to happen, but, that sort of trade, all of a sudden, if the team's at 500 or even a game behind, bringing a quality player like that in, could not only, buoy the fans, it'd buoy the locker room, build everything up and, get the excitement going again.
Well,
look what happened
when they played for me, isn't it?
Yeah. There was all that excitement when we brought Jalen Ramsey in back in the day, all of a sudden that, it really buoyed people up, and I think again, something like that could be the difference. Obviously, if that's the route the team decides to go down, but the Jets, a lot of Jets players at the moment are really not happy with the decisions of Zach Wilson, and the defense.
You brought up the Jets, and it just popped in my head, and I meant to mention it alone. Did you see who wrote a letter to the Jets this week?
Yeah, Kaepernick. He's
Asking to be put on the practice squad.
Yeah, mate, your career's over. Just give it up. You've not been
Exactly.
signed for 7 years, mate. If you I've seen some people, and I do kind of agree with it. If he genuinely wants to play football, USFL's there, the XFL's there.
Yeah.
The likes of Johnny Manziel and all these players have gone. Johnny Manziel wasn't successful, but there's been plenty of NFL players who've gone. You know what? I'm going to go to the XFL to prove what I could do. If he went to somewhere like the XFL, for example, and balled out there, all of a sudden teams are going to go, okay, yeah, maybe you. But he's just like, I just don't get him. 35 years old? Is he 36, something like that? And you've not played for 7 years? No team is going to touch you, mate. It's over.
That's it.
I think it's more a case of he's just sent this letter in and leaked it to the press so he can keep his name, to stay relevant. Yeah, to keep his sponsorship deals and to stay relevant. I don't actually think, and I don't think the Jets would ever had any interest in bringing him in. They've brought Trevor Siemian in to the practice squad as to try out. So if they're going to break, they're not going to be interested in you, mate. Sorry, your career's over. Let it go. Yeah, as they say in Frozen, let it go.
And let's just listen on that terrible reference.
Yeah.
Let's let this episode in this week go behind us, and let's look forward to hopefully something more positive this week.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So, that about does it for us this week, folks. Don't forget, as always, we're on YouTube where you can watch podcast episodes at LA Rams UK is our handle on there. Don't forget, there's the LA Rams UK website if you want to read articles. We'll try and get some stuff up to date. It's hard to write about positive things when things aren't going to go well, but what we'll maybe try and do is get the player features on the go, particularly with our player of the weeks. We'll maybe get them posted up. You'll obviously join us in Discord for plenty of chat, Rams related, fantasy football related, or if you need to basically get some parenting advice, believe it or not, we've got a Ramily parent chat on there as well. And also, if you are feeling generous, you can always buy us a coffee and help support the podcast. But that about does us for this week, folks. Andy, always a pleasure, mate, to chat
always
with you.
A pleasure, mate, even when it's not been a great week for us. This becomes popular. You might have to do. John doesn't watch the games until he only has to watch the highlights live on YouTube every week. It becomes popular. Yeah, you'll get your live reactions to the highlights every week. At least it means you get to bed handy every week, mate. So it's one benefit to it.
I would have watched it, to be honest with you. Generally, I watched it. I'll always watch highlights at the very least of 15 minutes. It was particularly the primetime games, like the Sunday night games is different, and you generally get to see them. Primetime games, it's hard to stay up. With 4 kids, I value my sleep. I like to sleep.
Yeah.
So, I just generally try to watch highlights, and it was seen on Discord. Some of the messages, I thought, I'll wait, and then I revealed to you before we came on. I've not watched it, by the way. I'm going to be watching it as we're doing this. And you said, it's so everyone can share in your pain. And hopefully you can see some of the pain in my face when we're doing that. But, folks, that does it for this week. One thing, just keep tuned for a couple of weeks' time. We will be hitting our 100th episode, and as part of that, we'll hopefully get to hear from some of the other guys in the LA Rams UK team.
Some of the OGs of the team, as we call them.
We'll be reaching out to them to reminisce about good old times gone by. But stay tuned for that, folks. But for tonight, I was John, and I was joined by Andy, and we'll catch you guys next week for another edition of the LA Rams UK podcast. Catch you all later, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.